think I don't think we're going to be doing any votes. I really think it's a discussion about support for
Excellent. Yeah.
Joe. So let me, you may have spoken to Joe. Let me just briefly go over then what I think we can do at this meeting. And I think this is what Joe asked us to do. About 2 weeks ago or a week ago, Joe presented me with a study that looks at home valuations, home capitalization, and the impact of aircraft noise on property value. And this report, this study, uses a particular methodology, and it's a hedonic methodology that apparently real estate firms use. And again, appreciate that I'm no real estate expert, but I did use some analytics from the study to derive some numbers that would be specific to SAM. And so with SAM, in the 65 DNL, one can use the results of their methodology and translate that, analyze that in terms of SAM, and then plus 65 in the DNL, and then I extrapolated out past that to where the noise levels are above 55, which is about the only level one can detect.
I get it. Because you said like if you are on a traffic street, it might be in the 50s.
Yeah. So in other words, you can't distinguish traffic noise and other community noise levels from once you get above around 50, 55, it becomes very difficult to determine what's what. So this study looks at property values in a way that is, and it looks at at 1 dB increments of noise coming up. DNL noise, as you know, is an average number, time weighted number, and it moves very little. Even with SAM, even if you had a lot more aircraft, right? And we expect more with SAM, we still get very little DNL. It's very sensitive. And so I use that to calculate what the valuation of homes would be. This may not be the only methodology that's appropriate. There are other methodologies, and I did.
No, but it's a good one. And I'm familiar. I've done hedonic modeling, and
good. Excellent. So it would be very helpful. So so I came up with a number, right? And if you read the report, I gave a number with SAM around $12 million. It's a very low number, a couple $1,000s per dB per dB increase. Yeah. And this increase is actually related to increases when you use the RNAV PBN type methodologies and technology improvements. And they did this at O'Hara. And they also did this at Logan Airport. And they found the same kind of correlation, but much stronger. The report really is very weak when it comes to Seattle, and it did not look at some of the parameters one used for house valuations, like resale values of the same home, which I think is very important to understand appreciation, right? And that piece was difficult to come by because there wasn't enough data in their data set.
And that's believe me, that is the bugaboo of studies. You would like to, I have nothing but paired sales. Mm-hmm. This was the sale price before the
like in 2012, what's the price, and then in 2020 when they moved, what's the price there?
What's the difference, and then what is that delta compared to what normally would be in the area?
Yes,
and a hedonic model is best to test that.
Yes,
but the numbers are never very impressive. Usually, they're rather they're a little tepid, but there is significance from what I read.
Yeah. So using the data they did have, I came up with a number of like 12 million, which is only like a $2,000 per house impact with a 1 dB increase. And we're only getting a half a dB. It's always less than 1.5. And so you can't. So this paper is I drew an analogy. I got some numbers. It went from 12 million to 46 million in 2037. If you expand it out past 65 DNL with contours that I interpolated, you can get to the numbers like $150 million.
Easy.
Yeah,
in that kind, yeah.
yeah,
And the other thing that that doesn't take into account, generally, are things like marketability and time on what really does happen with homes that are impacted by something like, you know, they don't sell. They're taken off the market.
yeah.
So we have the same thing happens there's the spikes in interest rates. What we had this in 2008 in the economic crash is that the homes just don't sell. So in other words, a house that you'd expect to sell in 90 days just doesn't sell because, and that can be measured, but it's more complex.
But if we use these numbers, and what I did was, I found communities that were, the data that I have available to me, is the sensitivities only to the zip code area.
Right.
And I don't have a community. Yeah, and unfortunately,
You have one zip code for
the zip code is, it extends out past Des Moines and into other areas. And I tried to use a controlled neighborhood like Shoreline, Kirkland, where there is no impact for aircraft noise, and contrast that with places that do have aircraft noise, particularly under the approaches where it's most significant for folks down in Des Moines, maybe Federal Way, and then up north.
Right.
And then certainly SeaTac. So I did that, and but there's not enough sensitivity in the methodology that is available with this study. And so I think we have to decide whether or not, and Joe wants to know whether we should be using this study to make some comments about.
Yeah,
Because we do, because it's a strong argument.
so here's what I think, what the study shows is significance. The study, for all the reasons you cite, it can't really plumb the depths. And there's a lot of issues that don't show up, as I've suggested, time on the market, just not being able to market, period. Homes get pulled off because they can't sell because I'm not going to pay this to center that. So those, but it is significant, and it is significant in comparison to other communities that are outside.
Yeah, so I saw a weak correlation with this study. But the things in the study that are missing, that would make the methodology stronger to support the argument that there is a correlation between aircraft noise and home appreciation in affected areas, and particularly with SAMP, where it's not short-term SAMP. SAMP allows for increased growth capacity, and so I tried to model just the SAMP. And to see where that would land, because that's really specific to the DEIS.
Right.
You'll notice that I have not been able to find a lot of documentation on house value capitalizations, appreciation, and SAMP. And so that you don't see that much. In fact, you don't see anything really. So what I further did was did an analysis of home price appreciation. I pulled stuff off Zillow for what you can get for free, and looked at different communities. With real numbers, not using the methodology of the study, which is very complex, just appreciation numbers. And what you see is something that is, in some communities, there is a few percent increase in home appreciation value loss, actually. But other communities did quite well, like Des Moines. Contrasted to communities like that were not impacted by aircraft noise. But this study of appreciation in these different communities, just using Zillow data, Redfin data, excuse me, shows you that there is also correlation between the price of the home and the appreciation rate. There are all these sorts of things like price per square foot has to be considered. More expensive homes seem to be accelerating at faster rate.
Well, that's right.
Yeah, so you have all of these different caveats that I think are difficult to untangle. But if I had good data based on second sales, resale values, and that data I don't have by zip code. Do you have that?
Yeah. What you're asking, I mean, I think where we're going with this is there's evidence of significance
Yeah.
that they didn't track. It's beyond the scope of our advisory committee to do the work. You've gone well over and above what any airport committee could possibly come together. And what we've done is enough work to cast doubt on the metrics that they've used. And it goes to the issue of, we have a significant impact, which we haven't plumbed. That would be done by a subsequent study if you wanted to put hard numbers. You can't expect to do it with what you've done. There's enough literature out there to suggest that there is an impact, coupled with the anecdotal experience of the real estate community, that if you ask anybody why do homes sell for less in Des Moines than they would in a comparable community, local TO or someplace else, north and out of the path, they'll tell you, well, it's the airplane noise.
Yeah, but you have to be able to back it up with numbers.
Well, I'm saying they've done. I think what is here, Jeff, is enough. It's significant based on, analogizing with these studies. No one actually studied the issue here at all.
Yes, it's not covered. It's also, I have not seen any formal public documents on house valuations and aircraft noise published that I found. This one study covers a little bit of it, but that's so, there are many derivations in that study. But the raw numbers, the appreciation numbers on second sales, I would think would be easy to get but I don't have access. It costs money to get that level of sensitivity.
That's exactly, we should charge it. Now, the problem with resales, having, as an appraiser and having dealt with this as an expert on both sides.
Yeah.
Resales are difficult because there's so many variables, particularly the more you go into custom homes. So I've had some luck where if we were comparing two subdivisions built by the same builder at the same time, and you wanted to say, isolate and measure the impact of a substation out in front of one and not the other, that kind of thing, you might be able to isolate and quantify the impact, because you can hold all other things equal.
Yeah,
the hedonic model attempts to do that, but again, all it can conclude is a number significant or not. In terms of the how much that number is, you seldom find a measure that's much over 5 or 10%. Now and then is the correlation strong enough for significance? So I think what we have to do is say, these are studies that were not considered. They suggest there's significance in the adverse impacts. If you really wanted to get down and find how much, we ought to commission the study to do it. It can be done, but it would take time or money. So they're not going to pay us $50,000 to go do the work, but that's what it would take.
Does it really take? Is there data? Is there data available that shows resale value, resales?
Well, yeah,
over a particular community.
Let me tell you how you do it.
Yeah.
You got to kind of do it by hand. You got to go into we're a disclosure state. So you can, sales are of record.
Yeah.
And you would have to go through, you could do it right within, you again, select a couple communities. You could say, we have Des Moines and what are our test committees? You might actually go to Normandy Park, which is outside and really not as effective.
That's a good place. There's not many homes there.
Right, and some of the homes, now, you'd have to be careful. I mean, you don't want to be, although you might want to compare the upper end custom homes, you'd want to focus on homes built, let's say under the certainly $1 million, if not $800,000 threshold. Look at that body of sales. Look at, when they have, the good news most of this area developed kind of in the last 30, 40 years. You're not factoring in for, like, I looked at stuff up in Everett on a project, and, you know, they were using homes built in the 20s, and new homes in the same area. That's great for charm. It's not good for making analytical comparisons. You want really bland subdivisions. Okay, and it would just take that, and then going into the having a list. You could get a list, and you could run the data through the county, where you would have a list of properties within an area, and you could do the whole area. They would run a spreadsheet. And then you would look for last sale, and then you would sort. And then
I got it.
Okay.
Would they, is that data publicly available?
Yes,
It's publicly available. What,
but you have to have somebody go in and do the work.
okay, but so it's not publicly available online, is that what you're saying?
Yes, it is online, but you'd have to go do the work. Nobody does the pairing. That has to be done by an analyst.
Yeah.
But the sale data absolutely is available. It's all public record. You just have to define the parameters. Okay? And I mean, the assessor cards are available on every residential property. It's used for the assessment of property values for ad valorem.
Okay, so so this is an assessor property database?
Yes, and it's all King County.
King County, okay. So it is available, it could be done.
Yes.
And it could be done in an extremely methodology, with a methodology that tries to look at second sales, or just the median. Just using the median home price is not sufficient to gain enough insight to make a strong.
Well, the reason is
with
what
correlation.
screws it up are custom homes. As you get into higher end, and then it's things like somebody buys a home.
People do add-ons.
And they do add-ons. I mean, look
Exactly,
at,
I totally get it. Yeah.
Western, our neighborhood, look at Lower Woodmont. I mean, there are some new homes, but everything is custom. Everyone goes in there and trips it out and adds 10,000,
I got it. I understand. There's all these limitations.
So where you want to go, but where, there would be fruitful data, are all the areas where subdivisions were developed around in the same decade, of the same quality, fundamentally 3 to 4 bedroom homes, 2-car garages. And those homes, you would find very similar neighborhoods to those built in Des Moines, in peripheral areas.
Yeah, that'd be our control for,
Yeah.
to understand this. So I do think it's a more engaged task that certainly I have the expertise to do, because there are all of these things that we would need to have strong arguments for to make the case.
Yeah, there's nuances in neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And I would tell you that a residential appraiser would understand that implicitly. It's part of what they do.
Why?
But they do, appraisals are very much micro economic studies. We want to do something at the macro level, and most appraisers could help you with nuance they wouldn't be able to do with the macro that you need to have. And I've actually run consortiums that have done this before. We did this way back in the 80s to show that prices in Multnomah County, Oregon were adversely affected by creative financing. And we got the assessor to reduce it by 10% based on a hedonic study across geography, working with the realtors. So they just didn't want to spend the money to do it. It can be done. I would say, we're talking about $50,000 to $100,000. You could specify. You could have an academic do it. I mean, you could go to a Runstad school and get somebody.
Why, Byron, do you think that, considering the scope of SAMP and the economics of it, why do you think this has not been done? If it had, I don't think it has been, but why hasn't this been done? And why is it not a fundamental piece of the?
Because they can't handle the truth
of the of an environmental.
Yeah, it should. Okay, so property value impacts these days are only required for. Usually at the high level, they are required often for citing by the citing authority. So I've done work that's been published, that's been actually on the public record of regarding the potential impacts of wind farms on property values. And the only reason I was brought in was they required it. And it was required, because there was no, most rural jurisdictions when zoning was did not comprehend electric energy generating facilities to be on ag land. Just didn't, it wasn't there, didn't know about it. And I would say what we've seen there, Jeff, they're following a road. These things happen all the time. They've got their regs. They don't go beyond the regs. If it wasn't in there, the box isn't there, the check, they're not asking. So that's one of the things, well, this advisory committee can help bring home is that, hey, guys, there's a very important impact here that the study isn't addressing. It's just glossed over.
Yeah,
and there are ways of getting it.
Yeah, right. So I think that we do have I think it's an important topic. This is the reason we're doing this is that Joe asked, should we pursue this? And so, and I think he's asking, can this group pursue it? And I took a first cut at it and then find out there's many other issues. If I want to be accurate and clear about it and say something specific, it's hard to do without the right data.
Professionally, I know what to do it and do it. It's a question of, X number of hours. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely available. It hasn't been mandated, so they haven't looked at it. And maybe what we could do is to say, we see there's demonstrable evidence with Edonic studies in comparable areas that suggests this should be done here. There's anecdotal evidence that Burien and Des Moines are disproportionately impacted and have been cumulatively for the last 30 years by this influence. And this master plan isn't complete without addressing it. They've held up the thing because, the zoning change in Seattle, because, some judge decided that they didn't decide what the impact on orcas was, but for a high rise, what's the impact on orca whales? And really, but the judge, this is much more tangible and real life, but they just didn't consider it.
Yeah, well, I think that the purpose of this meeting is to really ask and provide feedback to Joe about where we want to go with this. Okay, so I think we have evidence through the study that there's a weak correlation with all the caveats about the missing sensitivity geographics, because one really needs
that's because they didn't study. Like I said, of course there's weakness, but there is a real problem. And they haven't, just like your arguments about health, we know that we really think there is a problem, but they didn't, bother to test it and said, oh, move along, nothing to see here. And that's the same the same is true of property values.
Yeah, but in the case of health, we do have some conflicting reports. In the case of home appreciation, there is data, I would think, with enough specificity and sensitivity to the areas and type of homes, one could make a very strong case and just say that's what it is. Whether or not that infects how SAMP is rolled out and whether it's included, but it'd be nice to be able to say that or support that argument or not.
Yeah, because that's going to feed into the mitigation.
Yes,
piece of it. And,
yes, I do.
And whether this is a question of reducing assessed values,
yes, I do.
By some kind of exemption or something, and then secondly, it goes to having some kind of gate receipt or something that's dedicated to the communities, so we can compensate in other ways since we can't help the homeowners.
But without stronger data than this study, I think it's hard to make the argument without doing that additional real data.
Right. I agree with you, Jeff. We don't have the time, we don't have the means, and it wasn't within our charge to go out there and hire a consultant for $100,000 to do this.
Yeah, I'm not.
I mean, and all we can do is raise the red flag and suggest that's why we're concerned about SAM, is that they haven't considered adverse impacts on property values. We have evidence that it's significant. We would like to quantify it, but we don't have the means to do that.
Okay.
And that's what I was hoping, if we had Steve here and we'd have a forum, that we could make a resolution to city council to pass that on, or that we could, as the airport advisory committee, we could say we have found as a group, and make a positive statement, not just be timid about it and say, well, we don't have enough data. Of course we don't have enough data. We weren't given the resources to get it, but we're expert enough to know there's a problem here.
Okay, so really to answer Joe's question, I don't think we have to take a vote. I think we can give that feedback to Joe.
Yeah.
And tell him what we're suggesting doing if you want to pursue this, and include it in some form, either as a comment or feedback to the people that are working on this. That this is a valuable study to start looking at, that would add value to the kind of things that we really care about here in this community.
And we'd like to see so I don't know, Jason, I mean, what happens to what possible impact can our advisory board have on the SAM thing going forward? Ultimately, SAM is voted on by the board commissioners.
Correct.
Okay, and so our job would be to say, hey, guys, it's not complete.
That's right. This is.
I mean, you already went to council with the letter, but you guys decided not to move forward with it.
Yeah.
So you're already decided to go with individual letters, so you guys could add something with this language to your guys' individual letters.
Yeah, I mean, why can't we? I know there were some questions we had, but I still think it would have been a lot more effective to have something from the whole committee that we've decided. We don't disagree with anything.
You can still go with something substantially conforming to what they already approved.
Yes.
You still have that choice. They've already authorized you guys to write a committee letter and substantially conforming to what went to council.
Okay.
But that's, but you guys chose to not, but they've extended the deadline, so you still have time.
Well, then I think we should, and go with that letter. The heck, we've all given input, individual input. Jeff, you have, and I have, and Joe has. Great. Why not do something as a group? And we already have it. Why quibble with this? Because we don't have the means to do it. Jeff, of course there are issues, but that's not our role we've raised the flag. We're not the hired consultants to resolve it.
I think we discussed it at our last meeting. That some of the things that I wrote, there's some sensitivity about ensuring that the council has an opportunity to review some complex issues that I brought up. And so we chose not to include that as something we'd like to put forward from the city, and allow the council to read those and do what they'd like to do with them. If there's some other issues outside of what I've written, including maybe this issue about home property not being included, we certainly be okay to mention it, since we're not being specific on.
No, nor can we be, but it is significant. And
there's something. It's really a deficiency in the inclusion of important issues that should be included in the environmental impact statement, that affects a large number of folks, at least 9,000-10,000 people at minimum, and could about values of the property. They don't include that.
I mean, they could have done a study which we could critique and have issues with or not.
Yeah.
I mean, but they haven't even looked at it.
Yes,
right.
I don't believe there's any words at all on property valuations.
Right.
And so that would be a recommendation to proceed with that study for completeness.
Yeah, can we do that? Rebecca, how can we articulate what Jeff has just issues raised
And you're suggesting putting it out into a letter. Are we coming, is the city gonna be writing a letter?
We have an ILA for this two studies, and we will be writing a response.
Yeah. We could suggest that property value evaluations should be included as one of the topics there without presenting any supporting data, except to mention that there's some anecdotal studies.
well, that is supporting data. I mean, that's why we're raising the issues. There's been legitimate concerns raised in the literature. It hasn't been refined as to where we are, but it supports what anecdotally we understand on the ground.
Yes, and I believe that they already have that study.
That's correct.
The legal team has that study already, what they're gonna do with it.
And we've already hired consultants.
Yeah.
To look at this issue.
Good.
And so hopefully the consultants actually should be doing something like this. I would hope if they're going to use this study, they would.
I'm not sure if they're using that study specifically or if they're doing their own.
Yeah,
Who are there? Is it Echo Northwest? or
No,
somebody
it's
else?
Leland.
Or where are they at?
I assume Seattle, but I'm not sure.
I mean, there used to be a Leland for that.
yeah, I doubt they're gonna derive dollars from this. It's extremely difficult to take this report, study and derive
No, they're out of Portland.
specific information from it.
Maybe Leland.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So I think
They're
they're
okay,
Yeah, they're in economics.
yeah.
yeah, and this is basically economics,
Yeah,
real estate.
okay, good.
Good, and you don't need to, you don't need a whole lot, this is quite different than, epidemiological health issues and studies. And you don't need to know a lot about noise, to be able to do the analysis of home value capitalization. So I would think it'd be a good area for them to look at. And I think we all agree that it's an important issue that should be mentioned.
Okay, so Rebecca, Leland is doing a property value impact study as far as you know.
No, they're writing a memo to assist the three cities in responding to the SAN.
Yeah.
So they're not doing their own, we're not
Doing
hiring them to do a full study.
No,
They're reviewing the EIS to respond.
right, okay, is there any reason we can't, as the airport advisory, say, please look at the property value impacts, they're not doing that specifically.
Again, in order to do anything as the airport committee, it needs to go through council for approval. But as an individual, you can write anything.
And I think what they, and I think you gave us a good preview of the kind of things that that team is looking at. And it's quite specific to projects, particularly environmental impacts to projects where there's some deficiencies or lack of clarity on some of the programs and some in some very real ways that they're digging into, right? And so in that presentation that Rebecca gave, it was quite involved, and there's quite a bit of work in that area, but property values is not included.
I did not get into that part of it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Do we know who's working at Leland on this? Do you be in contact with Jerry Johnson?
Jennifer is one of them, Shook, and I have to look at who the other person is.
Is there any reason we couldn't contact them, give them input?
Yes,
Yes.
they're contracted with
Okay,
through the three cities, not.
all right,
Yeah, that may not be the appropriate direction,
Correct.
but we certainly can get some feedback to them indirectly.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, once it's all done, it'll all be public, all the memos and everything, once we.
Well, is there any reason we couldn't get some of what Jeff has done, ask them to look at it?
Yes, I'm happy to pass along whatever you want me to pass along.
Okay, well, why don't we do that, Jeff?
Again, I don't.
I know Leland, I mean, I've had, okay,
They have the study.
They do have the
They
study.
have the study.
They have
They
the
have
study
it,
from the very
they don't have
beginning.
my analysis of the study.
well,
and
could you send that to them?
Well, this is why we're having the meeting really, Barton, because this study has the methodology in their study can be criticized, and it's not strong evidence of a substantial impact to home valuation, in my opinion. And so this is not something to be published yet. It's missing sensitivity to be able to draw the conclusions necessary. It's stronger for Chicago and O'Hara. It's extremely weak right now for Seattle, if one were to use its analysis and methodology.
Well, I mean, is there any reason you couldn't say that and submit it to them to look at?
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about this group. I think it should be.
I mean, I think you should. I mean, there's nothing to talk about. I think you should. My answer is yes. I think Joe's answer is yes. So the question is, how do we do that? Or do we, or can we? How do we know anybody's gonna read what Jeff has written or his commentary?
For what? Where?
On the property impact values with the city's consultant and or again, there's a city stuff going on. They've hired 3 cities.
I'm happy to forward it on if that's what you want.
Yes.
If you, in terms of reading it through the board, they're required to read every comment letter, but I'm happy to,
Yeah, I don't
I meet with
think
the
it's that.
consultants every week. I'm happy to talk to them.
Yeah, I don't think that my analysis of Joe sent me a study. I had not read the study. Joe said, does this study support home appreciation value losses due to aircraft noise? Does it support it? And so I did an analysis of that report to see if it does support it, because you have to be kind of statistically minded and oriented to be able to take that report and say something specific about CTAC. That's why I wrote that. So there's some things in it that there's things in it that are missing that should be included, and that was what the discussion was going to be about. Should we try to include those things in this? And what I was missing was home valuations in the areas of the DNL 65, which you're telling me is more difficult than I understand. I already had some challenges getting the
Right.
data, and then appreciated just how much is missing to really draw good
That's accurate.
conclusions.
It can be, but you have to get into the numbers better.
Yes, totally
the numbers
understand.
Public, multiple listing, also, it has a fine tunes those numbers, and that's a second source. It's proprietary. We have access to it. Most realtors do.
Yeah.
You have to dig in, and it's something, again, I think what we need to do is put a red flag up and say there is easily obtainable data which has not been addressed regarding potential impacts, adverse impacts on home values suffered by those communities, within the DSL area that was not considered.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what.
I mean, I can draw them a picture of what you do, and I mean, whether anybody would pay attention if we spent, I don't know, a week of our time. I mean, we could, find some volunteers to run down and do it and pull this stuff together, but that's what the consultants are paid to do. And our job is to say if they've gone far enough, the answer is no. And the city council, I mean, these are their clients, they should be asking these questions. That's why they have citizen advisors who have some degree of expertise to help them out. They can't be expected, the mayor's HR person, she doesn't know this stuff, right?
So that's why. So they have a study. They can use that study as. I took a look at it. I think it's difficult to derive It's difficult to derive strong correlations with this report. And so I don't want to work against them. Let's let them do their work and use documentation they feel is appropriate and derive what it.
Well, why can't we put a red flag and say we don't think it's gone far enough?
I think that would be.
And there are some
feedback.
ways to do it.
Yeah, that would be good feedback for the,
How do we get that information? Who do I communicate that?
There's a reason we hired, because we also felt that the EIS didn't go far enough. That's why we hired Leland in the first place.
Okay,
So we felt the same way.
okay,
So I
well,
guess I'm confused on what you want us to pass on.
I want you to pass on, I want them to dig deeper into housing values using the mobile listing service and the assessor records where they can dive deeper, they can refine market areas, they can make better comparisons. I don't know what they've done, but if that's all they're using,
That's not all they're using.
what?
I said, that's not all they're using.
Well, what are they?
They're using all the city's GIS data, they're using all the DNL layers, they're using lots of stuff, so.
I mean,
they're
they
using
have
lots of stuff.
economists, I mean, they all had degrees from the same place I did at Portland State, that's where they all come out of. And University of Oregon, but, you know, they don't necessarily do the micro analysis you need to dig into that.
Yeah. You see, I think where we're getting a little bit hung up is that, that all of the issues that we're bringing up, health issues, noise issues, pollution issues, we want to make sure that gets to the, that the port sees those. But we also want to make sure that the legal folks are working some of those issues too, and we don't have feedback from them that they are doing that. And I think that they're working professionally on stuff, and they're contractors, so we really shouldn't be engaging directly with them at all. That needs to be done through the contractor, the people that are working with the contractor directly, which is the cities. So we should be providing our information to the cities. The cities can provide the feedback to them if that's what they'd like to do. And that would be our advice as in our council. And that should come up through our group, and Joe simply can say, just make sure they look at this kind of stuff.
I can tell you that one of their points in here, we're still working through this, so nothing's final and it's still not a lived document, but it's one of their bullet points is clearly says that there's significant academic literature pointing to the direct effects on noise on property value. However, the SEPA DEIS does not adequately assess the fiscal impacts of this expanded noise contour. So they're clearly looking at it.
So it sounds like they have that information. It sounds like they kind of just pulled that information right out of the study. And
this is the one sentence on a 22-page
Right.
document.
And indeed, if they want to make that case strong, they will do exactly what we're suggesting. Go to real numbers and figure out what the appreciation losses, if that's what they find, would be. And hopefully they'll take a crack at it.
It looks like they're
How do we-
referencing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different literature
Okay.
documents as well, not just the one.
All right, so then the question is, and you could get more specific. Local, I mean, you could actually put real numbers on that, but that's beyond scope of what they're asked.
I don't know what they're gonna do. They might very well be doing the work necessary to make a first cut at, you know, you can take many cuts at the appreciation. You look at median values, just say that's what I got, and just leave everything else off.
Unfortunately, the document's not public yet, so I can't.
Yeah.
All I can give you is generalization similar to what I did at the meeting.
But to make a really strong case, you gotta be very sensitive to communities, control communities, and compare and contrast under the flight paths directly for those particular homes to the north and south of us, and then look at some similar communities and do that work. And that's a lot of houses you have to manually do and drop into the 65 DNL. There's probably no quick tool to do that.
Well, I mean, we have the layers for the.
Yeah, I know you
for
can
the-
do it. I know you
for
can
the
map
state
it.
file.
You just need.
What you're looking for are, again, you know, paired sales, you cull them down.
Yep.
And not all will work. They're, more anecdotal than statistically significant. But there is, there's a homogeneity to many of the Des Moines neighborhoods directly impacted that you wouldn't find closer to the water. And I'm, confident you could take those homes built same time, look at how they've been bought and sold. Essentially, why are property values demonstrably lower in Des Moines?
Are they?
Are in Ken? Yeah, they are.
Well, you could see just on medium home prices, the CTAC appreciation values over the last 10 years doesn't move along as Des Moines has. Des Moines has done very well. In fact, Des Moines has done as well as Kirkland, Bellevue.
But remember, those are average price,
median, the middle
Yeah.
prices. So
Yeah.
right. That's all these issues around home prices.
Well, and then you can have one year have $500,000 home sell. The next year, it's a lower class of home that sells. The values go down. It's just the average price of home sold went down.
Sure.
With only maybe 8% of the inventory.
If you just take an average price, the whole thing can be biased by a large number of less expensive homes. Just take the middle price and you're pulling it around the other way. And all that has to be normalized.
And Rebecca, maybe what they that's enough to, so they've acknowledged a significant impact, or they've said an impact has not been addressed. There's evidence that it does have impact. The SEPA doesn't do that.
That sounds like that's going to be included in some form or fashion, and they've identified it. The only thing we can add is perhaps a methodology that they might want to include. If they haven't done it, we don't know the methodology that they're going to use to support that statement.
They've reviewed literature, which is part of, I've done these studies.
Yeah.
That's what you do. If you don't have data, you look at the literature. If you really want to demonstrate it, you dig into the data and you do your own hedonic model. They did it. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And we might suggest maybe really simply that since there's evidence there's concern about value impacts, that hedonic exercise be undertaken.
It could be a value. This study shows that there is value in using this, particularly if it's done with more specificity.
Yeah.
And so that's what I found. They can read this if they want to. It's interesting about how one comes to conclusions using those models and some of the deficiencies.
Well, remember, whoever did that was looking.
They were looking at a global, very large.
And we're talking about CTAC.
Yeah.
And what's happened around it in this community.
And SAM specifically. I think that's really where we gain the most traction to demonstrate that SAM, just in the 65 DNL, which is the only thing they look at, just there is a correlation there between aircraft noise that is measured, that has been acknowledged by the FAA and the Port, because that's the regulatory area that they're concerned with. And they can make some statements about just those homes in just those areas compared to a control area that's outside of that. Yes. Right, and that's what they should do, and I'm hoping they do it. And it sounds like they already have certainly enough information and awareness to move forward on some of that. So we could say a few things about the methodology to use if you wanted to pursue that.
So how do
that
we
would
do
be
that?
That would be our expert advice to them.
Yes. So how do we do that?
You're write a paragraph. You're a real estate expert. Do you have real estate expertise?
Not that much now.
Yeah, and I don't. I'm good at analytics, but if I don't have the data, I can't analyze anything. So I didn't even know what hedonic meant before I even started.
Yeah. So seriously, do you want me to? Should I?
A paragraph.
Who do I address it to as an additional comment? Having looked at some of the background data that may be.
If you want me to pass it on, the consultant would write it to me.
Yeah.
If that's what you're asking.
Yeah. All right.
Then
Okay.
you write it to me and I'll pass the information to our consultant.
All right,
You,
great.
you could pass it, Joe is our leader here for the team. You could pass it on to Joe and Joe could pass it along.
Yeah.
Or however you want to work it, Martin, but I think that your words probably have the most, level of expertise around the right type of words, short and clear. Let that rest of the experts on the legal teams working.
Yep.
Yep, and see where they go with it.
How do you spell hedonic?
Hedonic, Hedonic. As it sounds.
It's
Hedonic.
pleasure, and
Yeah.
it's your choice. And what it is, it's basically, it's multiple, it's multiple regression analysis. And it's kind of a black box, but you're able to assign impacts. So for single family homes, you're able to say, well, how much of the sale price is explained by the size of the house?
Right.
How much is explained by the number of bedrooms, by garages?
Different valuation
And you try to
criteria.
work, what you do is you rate these characteristics, you try to get a fairly homogeneous sampling. So you're not, how much is explained by the price of the house? Well, if everything was built between 70 and 80, it's not a big deal. And then you can say, we've isolated, and then you have unknowns. And what we did was, okay, how much of the sale price is explained by the creative financing that's been put in place? And then you run the all number, and what's significant? What is it? Is the color of house significant? Probably not. But some things are. High correlation between size of the house and the sale price. High correlation between date, or and if you have good enough data on kitchens, but it'd be like at least 8 to 10 characteristics like that, and then you're able to go through, and then because it's a multiple regression, then you're able to isolate for something like creative financing, or we could say this would be proximity to airport noise, and that would be, and then 10% of the sale price is explained by not being under the airport versus because everything else is kind of the same.
Yeah.
So that's how they work.
And think about just real life experiences like myself.
Are we done?
Oh, we are, yeah, I think we are.
Okay,
All
I'm
right.
gonna close the meeting.
Yeah.
and-
Other comments would just be anecdotal.
All right.
Think about when you go buy a house, right?
So
You
we're
are.
gonna, yeah.